Welcome back to Trans Sandwich by Taraella, where we talk about how trans people are now sandwiched between political forces with their own agenda on all sides and what it means for us. Today, I want to talk about how trans activists are doing it wrong by revisiting two topics: J.K. Rowling and the detrans or detransition phenomenon. Let's talk about J.K. Rowling first. The trans activist community has essentially defined Rowling as a transphobic enemy and has put up a strong wall of resistance towards her. When this was first developing about 2 years ago, I cautioned against this approach, and I still stand by my views today. Let me explain. Let's start by analyzing this situation rationally. Right now, Rowling stands in opposition to some of the trans rights reforms many of us support. However, this does not automatically mean that she is transphobic. Being involved in gay marriage politics for over a decade has taught me that sometimes good people can and do disagree. And while it is natural to be disappointed when people take a stand against something you passionately support, such disagreements and disappointments are an inevitable part of a liberal democracy. As to whether Rowling is transphobic or not, I think we need to remember that disagreeing with and disappointing most trans people does not equal transphobic. I believe the question of whether someone is transphobic or not should be answered with reference to the commonly accepted standards in liberal democracy, not feelings based responses, and certainly not justifications rooted in postmodern criticism. And based on standards that are commonly applicable in liberal democracy, I do not believe that Rowling is transphobic, even though she disagrees with reforms we want. It's like how many people oppose gay marriage but are still not homophobic. The problem with the trans community's overreaction to people like Rowling is that it doesn't do us any favors. Firstly, as many have observed, the trans community's overreaction has only pushed Rowling further into the other side, and she might have actually brought many people with her. Therefore, the whole exercise has only served to decrease trans acceptance. Secondly, perhaps even more importantly, in a liberal democracy, the undecided people generally make their minds up by observing the debate and seeing which sides make more rational sense. Therefore, keeping calm and cool, arguing rationally, and being charitable to those who disagree with you are always good strategies to adopt. Sadly, the trans activist community is taking a maladaptive stance, a stance that would lose our support and delay acceptance of trans people in the general community. It really is the opposite of how gay marriage was done, and this is why I'm so concerned. Now let's talk about the detrans or detransition community. People who once identified as trans but have gone back to their original gender. This has always been a sensitive issue in the trans community, but lately I've been seeing a severe reluctance to even acknowledge the issue. As a result, detrans people are often pushed into the arms of gender critical feminism, a movement that is eager to bring them on board and provide support and meaning for their suffering. This is why I have seen at least a few cases of detrans people ending up completely anti trans. I have argued in the past, and I will argue here again, that the trans community should provide acceptance and empathy towards detrans people and take their concerns on board where appropriate. Failing to do this adequately will almost certainly harm the credibility of the trans community in the long run. Having examined these two examples, I think there is a common trend. The trans activist community is treating everything like a zero sum game, where those who disagree with the dominant trans narrative in any way are seen as threats or enemies. I think the recent rise of postmodernism and critical theory has a lot to do with this. During the gay marriage movement, there wasn't nearly as much influence from postmodern criticism, but just in the past few years, the balance of forces among the activist community has drastically changed. The postmodern criticalism worldview is that all knowledge and discourse is shaped by power, which essentially has the effect of encouraging an attitude of zero sum struggle against people who promote an alternative view of things. As a result, LGBT activism has become much more antagonistic to those who disagree, and this has caused a level of backlash that has not been seen for many years. This just shows how the rise of postmodernism and criticalism has made the LGBT community less effective in its pursuit of acceptance and accommodation from the general community. I really hope we can turn the ship around before it's too late. That's all for today. I'll be back next time to discuss another big idea. Remember, on this show, the personalities don't matter. It's the ideas that matter. Until next time, remember to resist conformity and stay positive. Our future depends on it.